Plumbing. Introduction to the module. In this module, we look into the plumbing and water supply fixtures of home improvement and renovation. A basic water supply is very necessary for a household, and so is retaining and sustaining water. Proper plumbing of the house is also a factor for structural damage and therefore should be carefully designed. The topics included in this module are: basic faucet replacement, unclogging a sink drain, toilet replacement. Basic faucet replacement. Leaking and dripping is not all that unusual for sink faucets. In fact, any fitting with moving mechanical parts is prone to failure. When you factor in the constant force of water pressure acting on the parts, it's a wonder that faucets don't malfunction as easily or as often. It wouldn't entirely be fair to say that the inner workings of a faucet are regarded as disposable by manufacturers, but it is safe to say that these parts have become easier to remove and replace. How to remove an old faucet. To remove the old faucet, start by clearing out the cabinet under the sink and laying down towels. Dismantle the faucet to make sure the water is off after turning off the cold and hot stop valves. Remove the sprayer hose from the faucet sprayer nipple and unscrew the retaining nut that secures the sprayer base to the sink deck. Pull the sprayer hose out through the sink deck opening. Spray the mounting nuts that hold the faucet or faucet handles on the underside of the sink deck with penetrating oil for easier removal. Let the oil soak in for a few minutes. If the nut is rusted and stubbornly stuck, then drill a hole in its side, then tap the hole with a hammer and screwdriver to loosen it. Unhook the supply tubes at the stop valves. Don't reuse old chrome supply tubes. If the valve stops are missing or unworkable, replace them. Then remove the coupling nuts and the mounting nuts on the tailpieces of the faucet with a basin wrench or channel-type pliers. Pull the faucet body from the sink. Remove the sprayer base, if necessary, replace it. Scrape off any putty or cork with a putty knife and clean off the sink with a scouring pad and a non-abrasive cleaner. How to install a sink faucet. Install the base plate, if the faucet has one, onto the sink flange to be centered. Have a helper hold it straight from above while tightening the mounting nuts that secure the base plate from below. Make sure the plastic gasket is centered under the base plate. These nuts can be adequately tightened by hand. Retract the pull-out hose by drawing it out through the faucet body until the fitting at the end of the hose is flush with the bottom of the threaded faucet shank. Insert the shank and the supply tubes down through the top of the deck plate. Slip the mounting nut and washer over the free ends of the supply tubes and pull-out hose, then thread the nut onto the threaded faucet shank. Hand tighten. Tighten the retainer screws with a screwdriver to secure the faucet. Connect the end of the pull-out hose to the outlet port on the faucet body using a quick connector fitting. Hook up the water supply tubes to the faucet inlets. Make sure the tubes are long enough to reach the supply risers without stretching or kinking. Connect the supply tubes to the supply risers at the stop valves. Make sure to get the hot lines and cold lines attached correctly. Attach the spray head to the end of the pull-out hose and turn the fitting to secure the connection. Turn on the water supply and test. Unclogging a sink drain. The waste pipes leading from sinks, basins, baths, and showers can become blocked with all sorts of things, hair, food scraps, grease, and so on, so that water will no longer drain freely. There are many tools used to clean them. Larger soil pipes, to which waste pipes may be connected, and the soil pipes leading from toilets can also become blocked and need bigger versions of the same tools. Plunging. A rubber basin plunge, a rubber cap on the end of a long handle, is used to clear blocked waste pipes by using water pressure. With the basin, sink, or similar, full and the overflow blocked with a damp cloth, hold the plunger over the waste outlet and pump it up and down. This will force water down the waste pipe and should zero blockage. A force pump and an aerosol deer work on the same principle but create more pressure and can be used with an empty sink. Sink auger. A sink auger, or plumber's snake, is a flexible steel cable with a specially shaped head at one end and sometimes a turning handle at the other. It is passed down through the waste outlet and along the waste pipe until it reaches the blockage, where the head is turned to dislodge the blockage and allow water to flow freely. It cannot be used with a bottle-type trap. Removing the trap. If plunging or using a sink auger does not work, or if the trap is of the bottle type, then the trap itself has to be removed. Place a bucket beneath it and simply unscrew the connections by hand. If the blockage is in the trap, you should be able to clear it out, dismantling the trap if necessary. If it is farther down the waste pipe, removing the trap will give you a clearer run with a sink auger. Refit the trap, making sure that it is tight. Toilet replacement. All toilets made since 1994 have been required to use 1.6 gallons or less per flush, which has been a huge challenge for the industry. Today, the most evolved water-saving toilets have wide passages behind the bowl and wide, 3 inches, flush valve openings, features that facilitate short, powerful flushes. This means fewer second flushes and fewer clogged toilets. These problems were common complaints of the first generation of 1.6-gallon toilets and continue to beleaguer inferior models today. The criteria should include ease of installation, good flush performance, and reliability. With a little research, purchasing, and installing a high-functioning, the economical toilet will serve well for years to come. Replacing a toilet is simple, and the newer models of water-saving toilets have overcome the performance problems of earlier models. Gravity-assisted toilets are now designed with taller tanks and steeper bowl walls to increase the effects of gravity. A toilet's style is partly affected by the way it's built. There are several options to choose from. Two-piece toilets have a separate water tank and bowl. One-piece toilets have a tank and bowl made of one seamless unit. Elongated bowls are roughly 2 inches longer than regular bowls. Elevated toilets have higher seats, generally 18 inches, rather than the standard 15 inches. There are options of 2 basic types of flush mechanisms, gravity and pressure-assisted. Gravity-assisted toilets allow water to rush down from an elevated tank into the toilet bowl. Pressure-assisted toilets rely on either compressed air or water pumps to boost flushing power. Dual flush systems feature 2 flush buttons on the top of the tank, allows to select either an 8-ounce flush for liquids or a 1.6-gallon flush for solids. How to install a toilet. Clean and review the old closet flange. Look for wear or breaks. Also, check the flooring around the flange. If either the floor or flange is damaged or worn, repair them. Use a rag and mineral spirits to totally eliminate residue from the old wax ring. Place a rag in a bag into the opening to take care of odors. Insert new tank bolts, don't reuse old ones, into the openings in the closet flange. Make sure the bolt heads are angled to catch as much flange material as possible. Slide on the plastic washers and press them down to keep the firmly bolts upright. Remove the wax ring and apply it to the underside of the bowl, around the horn. Remove the protective covering. Do not touch the wax ring. It is very sticky. Remove the rag in a bag. If there is an older 4-inch flange, place the ring on the flange rather than the toilet to make sure it is centered. Lower the bowl onto the flange, taking care not to disturb the wax ring. The holes in the bowl base should align perfectly with the tank bolts. Add a washer and tighten a nut onto each bolt. Hand tighten each nut and then use channel-type pliers to further tighten the nuts. Alternate tightening the nuts until the bowl is secure. Do not over-tighten. Install the flush valve. Some tanks come with a flush valve and a fill valve pre-installed. For models that do not have this, insert the flush valve through the tank opening and tighten a spud nut over the threaded end of the valve. Place a foam spud washer on top of the spud nut. Adjust the fill valve as directed by the manufacturer to set the correct tank water level height and install the valve inside the tank. Hand tighten the nylon lock nut that secures the valve to the tank and then tighten it further with channel-type pliers. With the tank lying on its back, thread a rubber washer onto each tank bolt and insert it into the bolt holes from inside the tank. Then, thread a brass washer and hex nut onto the tank bolts from below and tighten them to a 1/4 turn past hand tight. Do not over-tighten. Position the tank on the bowl, spud washer on opening, bolts through bolt holes. Put a rubber washer, followed by a brass washer and a wing nut, on each bolt and tighten these up evenly. Stabilize the bolts with a large slotted screwdriver from inside the tank, but tighten the nuts, not the bolts. You may press down a little on a side, the front or the rear of the tank, to level it as you tighten the nuts by hand. Do not over-tighten and crack the tank. The tank should be level and stable when you're done. Hook up the water supply by connecting the supply tube to the threaded fill valve with the coupling nut provided. Turn on the water and test for leaks. Do not over-tighten. Attach the toilet seat by threading the plastic or brass bolts provided with the seat through the openings on the back of the rim and attaching nuts. Summary. In this module, we covered: it's not surprising that sink faucets leak and drip. Any fitting that contains moving mechanical parts is susceptible to failure. The waste pipes leading from sinks, basins, baths, and showers can become blocked with all sorts of things: hair, food scraps, grease, and so on. A sink auger, or plumber's snake, is a flexible steel cable with a specially shaped head at one end and sometimes a turning handle at the other. Replacing a toilet is simple, and the newer models of water-saving toilets have overcome the performance problems of earlier models.